Let's dive right into an epic internal journey to uncover a truth I know we've all wrestled with at some point. Have you ever wondered why achieving the goals we care about most feels so agonizingly hard? And more importantly, how do we actually break free from that invisible weight that's holding us back? Let's figure it out together.
Have you ever noticed your unfinished projects just gathering dust? Or maybe you think about that big dream you keep putting off, and you immediately feel this deep, sinking sense of guilt. So many people just assume they lack discipline, right? We think we're fundamentally flawed or that we just don't want it badly enough. We carry this heavy assumption around with us every single day.
Which brings us to part 1, the myth of laziness and understanding your brain's true motives.
It's time to lift that heavy burden of guilt because we need to look at the true biological nature of your resistance. The truth is, you don't fail because you lack ambition. You fail because your brain is this brilliantly designed survival machine, and it is biologically wired to avoid anything that feels overwhelming, uncertain, or emotionally draining. Whenever a goal feels just a little too big, your mind naturally hunts for something easier to conserve energy. It's not that your dreams don't matter to you. It's literally just biology at work, pulling you back toward comfort.
But hey, the really encouraging news here is that this instinct doesn't have to dictate your future. Your brain is incredibly adaptable. When a behavior becomes familiar, it takes way less mental effort. So the absolute crucial point here is that you only need to make one tiny, simple decision to teach your brain a new normal. The first step doesn't have to be impressive, it doesn't have to be grand, and it definitely doesn't have to be flawless. It simply has to exist. Just think about it. Every meaningful achievement in human history begins with someone choosing to move, even when the progress seems almost invisible at first.
Moving on to part 2, the motivation trap. Why waiting to feel ready is a huge mistake.
We have to overcome what is arguably the most dangerous illusion keeping ambitious people paralyzed. We spend years, literally years of our lives waiting to feel driven before we actually do anything. But let's look at reality for a second. Motivation is just an unreliable feeling. It fluctuates constantly based on your mood, your stress levels, how much sleep you got, and countless other completely unpredictable factors. We sit around waiting to feel ready, completely forgetting that motivation is incredibly fragile and it will absolutely abandon us exactly when we need it the most.
The reality? Action creates momentum. The hardest part of almost any task is just getting started. It's kind of like pushing a massive heavy boulder. The greatest, most agonizing amount of force is required right there at the very beginning. But once you break that initial inertia, even just for a few minutes, your brain completely shifts its attention away from the resistance and toward completion. Continuing suddenly feels so much easier. Action actually creates the momentum that naturally carries you forward.
This brings us perfectly to part 3, systems over willpower, and designing frictionless environments.
If waiting around for inspiration is a trap, then we have to look at how we physically construct our daily lives. We often make this huge mistake of believing that success depends on some superhuman level of self-discipline. But truly successful people, they rely way more on well-designed systems. Things like placing a book in plain sight, preparing healthy meals in advance, organizing your workspace, or scheduling focused time. By actively designing your environment, you make those positive choices infinitely easier to repeat.
And the crucial takeaway here is this: your environment quietly shapes your decisions. Honestly, it shapes them so much more than motivation ever will. By removing those invisible barriers around you and setting up a physical space that naturally supports your goals, you essentially pull yourself toward the right choices. You're eliminating the need for exhausting, daily willpower because you've built an environment that does all the heavy lifting for you.
Let's get into part 4, the perfectionism prison, and the danger of flawless expectations.
We really need to dive into this hidden mental trap because it can completely paralyze us, even when our environment is perfectly set up. Ask yourself this question: if it isn't flawless, is it still worth doing? You know, one of the biggest silent reasons we procrastinate is this deeply ingrained belief that if we can't do something perfectly, it's just not worth doing at all. This paralyzing idea that flawless execution is required turns every beautiful, ambitious goal into a massive source of crushing pressure, anxiety, and ultimately total paralysis.
But the truth is, real progress comes from consistent effort, not flawless performance. A small action, repeated every single day, will almost always outperform an occasional, frantic burst of intense motivation. Time has this remarkable, almost magical ability to multiply small decisions. Tiny improvements might seem totally insignificant today, right? But over weeks, months, and years, they compound into truly extraordinary results.
Which leads us to part 5, forging your identity.
becoming the person who follows through. As you consistently stack up those imperfect actions, a really profound internal transformation begins to take place. Just think about the flow of this process. Step 1, you start by keeping a small promise to yourself. Step 2, you repeat the action. And step 3, each time you do this, you're providing the hard evidence your brain needs to build unbreakable self-trust. Confidence isn't just something you wait to feel, it's something you actively build through evidence. And as that self-trust grows, step 4 naturally happens. You shift your identity.
And that brings us to the ultimate psychological shift. Your actions naturally align with the person you believe you are. You slowly stop thinking of yourself as someone who constantly procrastinates. Instead, you start seeing yourself as someone who actually follows through. That shift in identity, that becomes one of the absolute strongest forces behind lasting personal growth. Because you are no longer forcing a behavior, you are simply being who you truly are.
And our final section, part 6, the courage to begin again, redefining failure and setbacks.
But let's be completely real for a second. What happens when the storm hits? What happens when you inevitably stumble? Because let's face it, failure is an unavoidable part of the journey. But missing one day does not erase your progress. Missing one workout or falling behind on a project absolutely does not destroy the foundation you've built. The real danger is believing that one single mistake means you've completely failed. Growth belongs to those who absolutely refuse to let a temporary setback become a permanent surrender. What separates the people who succeed is simply their willingness to begin again.
In the end, success is so rarely built through these grand, dramatic moments that change everything overnight. It is built brick by ordinary brick. Every page you read, every healthy meal you choose, every single promise you keep to yourself becomes another piece of the life you're creating. And all of that, it requires just one thing. It all comes down to the incredible, quiet power of a single step.
So, the absolute most crucial point to leave you with today is this. You do not need to change your entire life today. You don't need a grand, flawless plan. You simply need the courage to break the inertia. Look at that summit right in front of you and ask yourself, what is your next small step? What is the one thing you can do right now to set that momentum in motion? Because that single step has the power to break the resistance, build your momentum, and begin a journey that can change absolutely everything. So, what's it going to be?